Hey guys, it's Lucian, and today I am going to be doing my August and September wrap-up. I know this is a long time coming, but again, I started school and everything. I was home for fall break in the middle of October for like 5 days, and I just didn't really feel like filming, but I'm now home for Thanksgiving, so I'm definitely going to catch up on some videos that I haven't been able to film since the summer. I didn't read a ton of books in either August or September because August I was just preparing to go back to school, and then I started school at the end of August, and September was just the beginning of everything, so I'm, at this point, usually fall into a reading slump around that time, but October and November I definitely have read a lot more books, so I will talk about that in December when I do the wrap-up for those months. But now I'm going to talk about the 8 books, I think it was, that I read in August and September, so let's just jump right in. The first book that I read in August was Bloodmarked by Tracy Deonn. This is the second book in the Legendborn cycle. I believe there's going to be 4 books total in this series, and this is sort of like a modern reimagining of the Arthurian legends. We follow a main character named Brigid, who at the start of the story, she has lost her mom, and she decides to go to this early college program at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. And while she is there, she finds out that she is part of this long line of people involved in Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. I don't want to say too much because this is the sequel, but I really love the world of this series. It is very confusing. I would like some more stuff at like the beginning or the end of the book that kind of just gives you like maybe a glossary or something, or anything other than like the small amount that we do get. Like we do get a table and like some other things here and there, but there's just a lot in this world. There are like mages, there are there's a lot of people that are reincarnated versions of the people from the Arthurian legend. So it can definitely get a little bit confusing at times just because of all of the information, and I also did not reread Legendborn before picking this up, so we'll see how I do with the third book, Oathbound. But this book is definitely action-packed. Like, even thinking now on some of the plot aspects of this book, there was so much happening, and I do think it is well segmented. I think there's 4 or 5 parts to the story, and it definitely, like, you can feel the plot progressing. There's a lot happening. It's very jam-packed, but it was really entertaining as well. I also enjoy the sort of turn in the series that we have experienced towards the end of this book. I can definitely see where the rest of the story is going to go, and I'm very excited for the third book, which comes out in March, I believe. I really like Bree. I like the other characters. They can kind of just sometimes fall to the wayside because we are in Bree's first-person point of view, though there are some really interesting things that happen with perspective in this book towards the end that I don't want to spoil, of course, but I do like the characters. It just sometimes, especially with long breaks in between the books, takes me a little while to reacquaint myself with them, but they are really interesting, and I am excited to see where they go in book 3. And I do kind of miss the UNC setting from the first book, but I do enjoy where we ended up in this story, and I'm excited to see if we explore some more of the US in future installments. And I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. Then I read Murder in Mesopotamia by Agatha Christie. This is an Hercule Poirot novel, though he doesn't show up till very late in this book, and it is actually narrated by a new character named Amy, who is a nurse, and she basically, I don't want to talk too much about it because Agatha Christie books are very short, and I usually go into them not knowing much, and I think it's a good way to experience the story, but basically she ends up kind of becoming the caretaker for this woman who is the wife of one of these archaeologists on a dig in Mesopotamia, or modern-day Iraq. Actually, are they? Yeah, they are in Iraq in this book, and essentially someone dies and Amy is caught in the middle of it, and Hercule Poirot shows up, and it's a really interesting story. I also gave this 4 out of 5 stars. Agatha Christie books will always pull me out of a reading slump whenever I need them to, and I sort of just pick them up when I don't know what else to read because they're quick to fly through. None of them, or very few of them, are over 250 pages, so they're nice to just read and turn my brain off because the mysteries are usually very engaging, and I thought this one was interesting. The resolution is a little bit far-fetched, but I didn't mind it as much as some other people have, from what I've seen, but It was enjoyable. I liked Amy's narration. It's in the first person, and I think she's an interesting protagonist or narrator. And I do really enjoy the Middle East setting that Agatha Christie depicts in this book and a few other ones here and there. Agatha Christie definitely knows a lot about this region of the world because she was married to an archaeologist, so she definitely pulls on a lot of her lived experience. There are some things that are just not politically correct or just morally okay in the modern sense, but if you're able to kind of overlook that, I think you will really enjoy this, and it's a great mystery as well. Next, I read Destroy the Day by Brigid Kemmerer. This is the third and final book in the Defy the Night series, which is sort of like a... It reminds me a lot of Robin Hood because it follows these outlaws who live in the kingdom where there is this sickness that has plagued the citizens for a really long time, and there's only one cure for it, known as the Moonflower. So one of our main characters is Tessa, and she is one of these outlaws with her friend, and they sneak out at night to steal the Moonflower and give it to people in need. And our other main character in the first book is Corrick, who is the prince and the king's justice, and he is supposed to dole out punishments for such rebels. And this is the third book, and I loved this book. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars, definitely one of my favorites of the year. I love Brigid Kemmerer's writing. It's so easy to read, and the way this book is structured is a little bit unusual because we get like there's actually 3 perspectives in this book, and so we kind of get each character's perspective at the very beginning, but then we dedicate huge swaths of chapters to each one, and then they intertwine at the end, because all the characters are separated in this installment. And I really loved that. In the beginning, I was not sure how it would work, but I just enjoyed getting to see each character's individual journeys, like, all the way through before they meet up at the end, because it helped sort of avoid any confusion with the jumping perspectives from each chapter. So I really loved the way Brigid Kemmerer structured this book, and I just thought the plot was really captivating the entire way through. I would read hundreds of pages at a time just because I needed to know what would happen. I jumped right back into the story without having to read the first 2 books again, and I just really love this series as a whole, and I think each book kind of gets better. And it culminates in a great finale. I thought the very ending of this book and the ending of the trilogy was super satisfying. It was a perfect way to conclude this series, and I really like how Brigid Kemmerer tied everything up. I just love the way that she writes, both like in the prose and then how she also builds up her worlds. They're very easy to understand, but also very complex. She weaves in political intrigue in a really masterful way, and I'm just on the Brigid Kemmerer train. I cannot wait for her book, which comes out next year, in the beginning of the year, which is a sequel to one of her other series, and she, I just think, is great at building these worlds. I love the way that the mystery at the heart of the series is resolved regarding the Moonflower, and the things just really open up in scope in this book, and I thought she handled it really, really well. This may look like a daunting finale because it's very long, but it absolutely flies by. And if you have not picked up any Brigid Kemmerer books, but especially the Defy the Night series, I would definitely do so because it is just great the entire way through. Especially if you don't love really intense epic fantasy, this is definitely the way to go. Then I picked up Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. This is a romance book that follows 2 main characters, Emma and Justin, who both find out that they have this like curse where every time they break up with someone, that person ends up finding the love of their life right after. And so they decide that they are going to kind of try to test the universe and spend some time together to see if they can break the curse. That plot sounded really intriguing, and I also love this cover, and I have enjoyed a few Abby Jimenez books. I've read all of them, and it's kind of a hit or miss for me. Like, I think I enjoy every other book from her. I really did not love the book before this, Yours Truly, and I did like this one more, but I still gave it 3 stars. I thought it was okay. I like never think about it since I've read it. I like the characters. All of her books, while being romances, do include a lot of deeper themes and messages, and I enjoyed that in this book. I don't want to spoil them, but I think they're handled well. It's just the romance and the writing is not my favorite. I liked the characters, but the book just was way too long, and I just found myself bored a lot of the time, unfortunately. But I would recommend it if you just want, like, an easy book to read, and if you don't mind some filler in between the chapters and the romantic bits and everything. And also I feel like the promise of the premise was kind of lost by the end, but, you know, there are definitely people who will love this book, who have loved this book, and I will probably continue to read her books because I don't know why. They're just fun to read, even if not, 4 or 5 stars all the time. Then I finally read House of Flame and Shadow by Sarah J. Maas. This is the third and final book in the Crescent City series. I cannot talk about this book at all because it would spoil not even just the series, but many other Sarah J. Maas series. This is literally like the Avengers Endgame of the Sarah J. Maas universe, and I mean, also, if you have not read this series or her other books yet, I don't know why you would care about what this is about, but it is, I really enjoyed it. I ended up giving it 4 out of 5 stars. It took me a while to read because I decided to start reading it the day before I left for college, and then I was reading it while moving in and starting classes. That was maybe not the best decision, but I did really like this book. The first part was very quick to read just because it was like reveal after reveal after reveal, and then the rest of the book is just crazy because of how much is happening. This definitely feels like 2 books in one. That could sound like a complaint, but it actually wasn't, because I much prefer the way that this book worked than the last book, which felt just unbearably long. This one, at least I could count on being on the edge of my seat chapter after chapter, because something crazy was always happening. I also found myself enjoying the characters a lot more in this installment. I've always enjoyed Bryce, but I found myself liking Hunt a lot more, and there's a bajillion side characters who all have their own POV, and I ended up liking them a lot more than I did in House of Sky and Breath was the last book. I do think that the first book will always be my favorite in the series, but this one is definitely very good as well. I like the world, I like the characters, the plot was, as I said, just freaking crazy, and, yeah, I thought it was good, and the ending, I know a lot of people were not amazed by it, but I liked it, and Sarah J. Maas is just always a guilty pleasure for me. Like, I don't really think about her books very much after I finish them, especially now. Like, the Throne of Glass series is one of my favorite series, and I will, like, theorize about it and talk about it, but Agatha and this one, I kind of just read them and then peace out until the next book comes out. So I'm excited to see what happens in the future, especially with all the just mind-boggling plot developments and reveals that happen in this book. But I'm gonna put it down now because it's very not comfortable to hold because it's like 850 pages, but gave it 4 stars, and yeah, it's pretty much what you would expect from a Sarah J. Maas finale. Then I read Grim Lovelies by Megan Shepherd. This is a fantasy book, but it's urban fantasy because it takes place in Paris, obviously, and it follows a girl named Anouk who is sort of like she's... How do I describe this book? She's basically like a prisoner in the house of this woman who has turned, she and the other people who work for this woman all used to be animals, and they're called beasties, but they have been enchanted to look like regular humans, but they're not allowed to leave this house, and so Anouk sort of dreams about being able to escape and live with the pretties who are normal people, and basically something happens to the woman who is basically their mistress, essentially, or mistress, whatever, however you want to describe it, and she is basically plunged into the dark and decadent world of Paris with her friends who are also beasties, and they have to race against the clock to make sure that they don't turn back into animals. And if you're wondering why I am struggling to describe this book, it's because I pretty much forgot that I read it. I gave this 3 out of 5 stars. It was fun to read, and now that I'm thinking about it, like, I'm recalling certain plot aspects and everything, and it was engaging, but it just wasn't anything special. I feel mean for saying that, but it it was kind of just like a YA fantasy. Yeah, I think this is something that would have been really popular in like the 2010s, but it came out in 2018 or something, 2017, and by then, and by now, I've just read so many books that I enjoy better or enjoy more, that this one was just sort of okay. I never really felt connected to the characters, and while the plot was interesting, and I really liked the setting, the Paris setting, I think Megan Shepherd's descriptions of it are really interesting, I just never really... I always felt at arm's length with the characters and the cast in this book, because even Anouk, like, it's told solely from her perspective, but it's told in third person, and you just never feel connected to her or the other beasties in this story, because they're not really people, they don't know. And you would think that would be interesting, because they don't really understand the world, because they are outside of their animal forms or whatever, but it just never became that. It was always sort of focused on the plot and the forward momentum, and besides Anouk, I genuinely could not name a single character in this book. And I considered, when I finished it, reading the sequel, but I just don't think I ever will, because it wasn't enthralling enough at this point, now that I've had some weeks since I finished it, or months honestly, that I would ever continue with the duology. But there are definitely some people who would enjoy it, and happy for them. Next, I read Wisteria by Adalyn Grace. This is the third and, like, kind of technically final book in the Belladonna series. I cannot say anything about this book, because even who it focuses on is kind of a spoiler for book one, so I will just say that I did enjoy this book. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I thought the first half was a little bit boring, just because Adalyn Grace really spends a lot of time, like, building up these newer characters. Like, they're characters we've known since Belladonna and Foxglove, but they are new well, one of them isn't, but they're new main characters, and so she spends a lot of time sort of building up their relationship and building up the setting, because it's a new setting. But by the second half, the plot really starts to come together. There's a new mystery, and just everything weaves together in a very nice way, which is why I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. I really liked the ending of this book, but I did miss certain aspects of the first 2 books, which were not really present in this finale. Also, the first half revolves around building up towards this plot twist, which I have predicted since page 1, so up until that, it was just a little bit tedious to read, apart from the beautiful descriptions, but since then, or like after that, it was really engaging, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. So I really like this series. I find it interesting. I like the gothic aspects of it, and this book definitely has a very wintry vibe, so it's great for this time of year. And I would definitely recommend this entire trilogy, and there's going to be like a holiday novella coming out next year, so it is a great time to catch up until then. Next, I picked up The Pale Horse by Agatha Christie, another Agatha Christie book. This is not one of her detectives, although it does feature Ariadne Oliver, who is a recurring character in some of her other books. She's like a older mystery writer, and this book kind of deals with the supernatural, and so I decided to read it, because, I don't know, it was just, felt like a good thing to read around the September time. There's sort of, I don't even know how to describe, you know what, I'm just gonna read the back, because I don't want to, like, say too much, but basically it says, when an elderly priest is murdered, the killer searches the victim so roughly that his already ragged cassock is torn in the process. What was the killer looking for, and what had a dying woman confided to the priest on her deathbed only hours earlier? Mark Easterbrook and his sidekick Ginger Corrigan are determined to find out. Maybe the 3 women who run the Pale Horse public house and who are rumored to practice the dark arts can provide some answers. So, as you can tell, there's a very complicated web. A lot of things are happening, and a lot of things are sort of interconnected. This book was a little bit confusing in the end, just because of what was happening. Like, sometimes we get first-person point of view of Mark, sometimes it's kind of giving background information in a third-person omniscient point of view, and there's a lot of paranormal stuff throughout this book, and I thought the ending was interesting. I liked the way it explained the mystery, but it just was not as engaging of a mystery as I'm used to with Agatha Christie. Also, I find her books that are told from a non-detective's point of view very hit or miss. Like, I enjoy the Sidiford mystery and Why Didn't They Ask Evans, but this one was just a little bit boring because they are not detectives, so it's frustrating sometimes to read about people who have no idea what they are doing. But I do know that there is a limited series, well, yeah, it says limited series on the bottom of the book of this, and I would be interested in watching that because I feel like it would translate better to a visual medium than the print, or than like a novel format, because, as I said, it would kind of it would sort of just avoid any confusion that is present through the changing of perspectives and narrative. But I give it 3 stars, and I would recommend it if you're looking for a spooky read, but there are definitely some other Agatha Christie books that I would recommend for the spooky time of year before I would suggest this one. And the last book that I read in September was The Brothers Hawthorne by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This is a companion book to the Inheritance games, and it takes place in between the last chapter and epilogue of The Final Gambit, which is the last book in that series, and it's also the precursor for the spin-off series that she is currently writing, and it follows Grayson and Jameson as they are sort of going on their individual quests. It's a very long book, and it felt very long despite the short, snappy chapters. I definitely enjoyed one of the brothers' perspectives over the other. And I don't know, I think this is definitely a filler book in the series. It could have been like a novella or a short story, I think, or just a shorter book. Like, it is over 460 pages, so it just dragged on at certain points, and I felt like we were driving a car through mud or something. Like, it just felt tedious at times to read. But I did like the way that, I did like the 2 brothers' individual stories. It was just the amount of time spent on each one that kind of bored me a little bit. I don't know, I just don't really do well with companion books sometimes, but I know that I have to read it before reading the next book in this universe. And yeah, so I give it 3 out of 5 stars, and if I were to rewrite this book, I would have made it like 350 pages at max, just because so much of this book is focused on Grayson and Jameson's inner monologues and like navel-gazing and things like that. Also, it's told in 3rd person, which is really annoying because the rest of the series is told in 1st person, and it just made me feel a little bit removed from the characters. I know it makes it sound like I only like first-person books, which is just not the case, because a lot of my favorite books are told in 3rd person, but I think consistency is good in a series, and also when it's such a character-focused series, and there's only like 1 or 2 narrators, I do enjoy first person more so than 3rd, but it was good, it was solid. If you are a die-hard fan of this series, I would recommend it, but just as a casual reader of it, it was not my favorite. But I'm still gonna read The Grandest Game and whatever else she writes in this universe. But that is it for my August and September wrap-up. I did enjoy most of the books in those 2 months, and I definitely can't wait for some sequels, and I did find a favorite book of the year in August when I read Destroy the Day. But I would love to know what you read in August and September, and also any of the thoughts that you all have on the books that I mentioned today. But that is it for this video. I really hope you all enjoyed, and I will see you soon for a new one. Bye!